Hey guys, and welcome to CANNAMAntv. My name is Conor Macleod, and in this episode, I get the chance to chat with Dr. Callie Seaman. Callie is the Director and Formulation Chemist at Aqua Labs, a nutrient solution company passionate about analytical testing, cutting-edge innovation, and integrity-driven products. Gaining a degree in Biomedical Sciences and then a PhD in Formulation Chemistry, Callie has published numerous academic papers and articles over the years, offering her insight into cannabis, as well as being a medicinal cannabis advocate, who has given numerous talks campaigning for greater access to medicinal cannabis in the UK, whilst coming to terms with their own medicinal consumption. So, make sure and like and subscribe, and stick around until the end, so you don't miss out on the end of episode cartoon. Now then, let's talk cannabis.
It's the lab. Welcome to my laboratoire.
Yeah, so you actually work at the moment, yeah?
Yeah.
Alright, excellent. I'll do more authenticity to the interview here, Callie. Nice one.
Oh yeah, not a problem. We can get some things out of the background. We can have a little twiddle with anything, you know.
Well, just before we get kind of dived into your credentials and obviously the knowledge you've got, could you just start off with your own experience using cannabis for epilepsy? When were you first actually diagnosed with having epilepsy, and what kind is it?
So, at the age of 15, one day I went to school and I wasn't feeling very well. My dad had come back from being abroad. He'd been doing some work abroad then. He wasn't very well and he said he was having hallucinations and things. I went to school and I collapsed on the school field. And the next thing I knew, I woke up and I'm going into the back of an ambulance. I've got the whole school surrounding the field and I've got no idea what's happened. It turns out I've had a grand mal in the middle of the school field at age 15. And I'm shipped off to hospital and they pump me full of a load of benzodiazepines, get sent back home, have another 3 fits at home, 3 grand mals, rush back into hospital and wake up, I'd probably say 10 hours later, again because they pumped me full of benzodiazepines. They've then very quickly sent me away for EEGs on my brain, MRIs to check if there's any tumours in there, was any damage. And what they actually came back with is I had a low threshold to epilepsy. So they didn't give me what you would call a definitive diagnosis then, but they were very quick to put me onto a drug called clomazepine. And now they said to me basically, if you don't take this drug, you can't have baths alone, you can't do any of the sports that you were doing. I was a very active sea cadet at the time. I was going abseiling, I was sailing, I was canoeing, I was doing everything. And all of a sudden they said, well, no, you can't do that anymore. But if you take these tablets, you can do that.
Yeah.
And so, okay, then I'll take these tablets. Now, I went from a straight A student. I was really kind of focused to an average CD when I did my GCSEs at the end of that. Struggled to start my A levels. I felt a completely different person. And throughout all that time, as I say, I was not me anymore, I put weight on. But it was my father. So it was my dad said, here, Callie, let's try cannabis. And I smoked cannabis with him and he grew for me. But you weren't there to talk about it. Really, people didn't really talk about it very much. And it was still very much frowned upon to talk about. So I was taught from a very young age, we didn't speak about this, but my dad took me to the local grow shop, which was aquaculture in the day. And I got to know all the boys there. And I'm lucky enough to be actually still sat here with my business partner, Simon Spinks, who was one of the original boys who started that. And they, taught us everything about hydroponics. And I'm 15 and I'm learning all of this and not talking about it to my friends, but I would come home and regularly I would have, smoke with my dad. Came off the medication at 18 because I'd had no more fits and went into a big mass amount of denial about my epilepsy. I'd not had any more fits. I went, I'm not epileptic, no, because people treated me differently. At school, I was finding graffiti in the table with, I was Fixter at the time then, so it was Callie Fixter, was a smackhead. Because of what had happened at school. And so I went into a big amount of denial, but carried on consuming cannabis because it helped. And I actually just thought I was just using it recreationally. 25 years pass. 25 years pass and I do a PhD and I'm finishing the PhD. So I've stopped smoking. I've started my own business at the same time as trying to finish a PhD. And it was a very, very hot day. And I collapsed at work in the toilets. I hit a sink on the way down, big, massive egg on my head, smashes the tooth up. And and comes back round covered in blood. And again, at this point, I'm still in denial, just going, I haven't got epilepsy. No. Went to hospital, got checked over and sent home. And then the neurologist contacted me probably 3 months later and went in for an appointment. And they said, no, you've always been epileptic. You've never not been epileptic. And I was distraught. They took my driving license off me. Again, still massively in denial at this point. Nope. I've just fainted. Hot day. Just fainted. Nope, I'm not epileptic. Nope. A year later, I start training for a half marathon. And guess what I stopped doing?
Smoking.
Yes, because I want to get fit. Guess what happens 2 days after the half marathon? I have another grand mile.
Yeah.
At this point, luckily, again, I owe my life to Simon Spink some days because he was there. And I call him my treasure cat. Alice in Wonderland, and that's wrote about epilepsy and a lot of people experience. And every time I've gone out cold, he's been there, and he's been my treasure cat, pulling me back out and keeping me in this world. Because you leave this realm when you gather fit, you leave this realm, and he always pulls me back. You know, I can always hear him there, just being calm, just keeping me there and keeping things ticking over. And just 2 minutes. I'm just in the middle of So this is a working lab. We've got a warehouse coming.
All I need is somebody, just one of the Furry Freak brothers walking past with a joint, and it'll be fine.
You know the Furry Freak brothers?
Oh, definitely. That's all my cartoons are. But I mean, I had years of reading that kind of stuff. Definitely.
About Freddy's cat.
Amazing.
I was brought up on that. Yeah, you trying to. Well, that's my husband you've just seen there, and he does look like one of the Furry Freak brothers. Not Fat Freddy, but we've got a Fat Freddy in there as well.
No, that's excellent. Hang on, if you've not seen them, I'll send you over a link to them. I've got about 13 comics at the moment. I've got also these other ones I've been doing because I spent so much time doing interviewing, drawing a full 8-page comics, kind of unsustainable. So I'm just doing single skinners, they're called. So it's just a single page, but I'll send you over a few links, see what you think.
Please, yes. My dad's he's not here at the moment, my dad, because my dad works here as well.
Oh, really? Excellent. Yeah. That's a proper family environment you've got going there. That's excellent.
This is what I aimed when I started the business, was we went from the company that I worked for previously, went into administration, aquaculture. It was one of the first kind of shops in South Yorkshire, and we taught a lot of people how to grow. We were responsible for, I can't even think how many people's grows we were responsible for food from, because I started working for them in 2001 as I was finishing my degree in Biomedical Sciences.
Right.
So I'd been going there all that time with my dad. So I started working for them as a Saturday girl, and then we moved premises. So we moved up to here. The shop expanded, the manufacturing plant started. They sponsored my PhD, but then halfway through that, the company went into administration due to financial difficulties and things. Yeah. And I was approached to start this business, which was Aqua Labs. Yeah. Which was the manufacturing of fertilizers. And so my dad used to work for aquaculture with me on a Saturday, so we brought him into the business here, and we started building that 7 years ago. And then we've slowly sort of brought more and more people on board. So I brought 2 more other friends on board who were unemployed. So something that I like to sort of pride in the way we employ people is people who are out of work, who need a chance, and are grafters. And that's what it's about. And it's people I can trust. My dad I can trust. My husband's just come to start working for us, and Ben, and John, and all the boys in that warehouse are. We're like a family, and it's what I pride myself in doing. Is I want people to feel like they're part of something special. Yeah. Not just a number. You're not just a number to me. You are an individual whose everybody's ideas count. Everybody's personality counts, and I always make sure that my staff are paid above minimum wage. They have private healthcare. Families first. Number one is family is first. If you've got a problem at home, you get home and you sort that out. Don't worry about it. We'll deal with the stuff here. And that's what it's about. And that's what we want to build. And I'm trying to do that. I'm trying to that change. Some days it's easier than others. Some days it's...
Yeah, understandable. That's a fantastic ethos, Callie. That really is going to... It's pretty evident that you're really serious about this. which is fantastic because of the fact that it's not to be passionate about something that you love. It's not really work, you know. It's not you're showing up to do something you love every day. So was it through Aqua Labs that you did the Shogun line of nutrients? Was it through that?
Yes. So what we did is, as I say, we got the company, the aquaculture went into administration. So Aqua Labs then got started, and then we started the brand Shogun fertilizers. So we made those. We've got another brand called Silver Bullet as well. So that is a sterilizer. So we sort of started that up, and now I've gone into the medicinal side of things. So as I say, it was the second of the grand mals that I had. I came way out of the denial. I just was like, right, boom.
This is what's happening.
Yeah. And then there was an experience in a tent and some DMT. And now
I just said DMT there, by the way, because that sounded a bit obscure there. An experience in a tent. I think we've all been there.
Yeah, an experience. Well, there was the experience in a tent when I got pregnant with my son after we'd been to Stonehenge. So tents kind of have this kind of symbolic thing with me. But I came back very changed, and I knew what my mission was. It was like I'd been given it, and I had to spread the word about epilepsy. I had to communicate with people about it, and I had to talk about my cannabis use, because me and my dad have often spoke about it. Well, could you imagine, had you not been consuming for those 20 years, how many more fits you would have been having? And every time strain changes can sometimes cause a problem. That can sometimes cause me to be knocked off my feet and can cause what's known as an aura. Right. So epileptic people quite often have, or warriors as I like to call ourselves, we have a warning sign. It's what's known as an aura. Everyone's is different. It can be a taste. It can be a feeling. Mine's a feeling. It starts in my feet and it's a warm feeling, and it comes up and envelops me. And it's a bit like, have you seen Harry Potter and the Death, where the Death Eaters envelop? It's like that. And it comes over and it just completely envelops you. It's coming. And you've probably got about, well, personally, I have about 20 seconds before I'll hit the deck. Right. And I want to just cool down, and I quite often end up with my trousers around my ankles. It's quite a joke, because all I'm trying to do is cool down. I just want to cool down. And one of the things that also I find is if I get to a toilet and I have a poo, the aura stops. It's just like some kind of purging, and it goes away and it stops. So there's quite a running joke of Cal's got her trousers around her ankle, she's probably having a fit.
I like that you've been in the middle of a field and legging it for a portaloo or something like that. She's got a fit, it's okay, she's had a fit.
Trousers off! But I don't remember any of these things happening. I'm somewhere else. And so I'm in a different realm. But it's what it has symbolised to me. There was been a time I was out with friends, and I don't remember what had happened, and they had to get me home. Right. And I actually realised now I'd had a fit. That was what was happening, and it was this. My trousers were around my ankles, and so it must be something.
Just a blackout? Is it just a blackout? You have you get a sensation in your feet, and then it's just a blackout after that kind of thing.
Well, more tunnel. Right. That happens. I get a tunnel, and the whirligigs start. So it's like sort of little whirligigs will start, and then the tunnel comes in, and then it's gone. It's a bit. It's sort of like. And then you're out, and then you wake up, and then you see the fear in people's faces, and then you know what's happened. Or one of my favourite ones is to look down and go, "Oh, wet my son. That's happened again. Whoops."
Well, at least if you're ever drinking, it's an accident. You can just blame it on your fits. That's all. That'd be handy. So you said about strain changes there a minute ago. So do you have a consistent strain that you consume all the time that keeps your fits at bay?
At the moment, I'm finding the Mac is a good strain. I'm finding that to be good at the moment. But I've just I went to a talk by Bonnie Goldstein. Right. And she talks a lot about resetting. So I'd never come across this. So what they'll quite often do is actually have this reset. So you have 72 hours off. So they will stop it. And what it's to do is to actually restart your endocannabinoid system. I didn't really understand as much about this until she explained it, that you almost stop producing receptors for it. Your body thinks you've got a lot there already. So quite often with children that's on medication, because they've been regularly given this, the body goes, well, there's plenty here. A little bit like diabetics with insulin. Oh, there's plenty here. We don't need to make any. So in some ways, what you need to do is starve the system to reset it again. Right. it's a new concept to me, this. It's a completely new concept. So I'm really, really interested in it. I do know that the Testarossa caused me to have an aura. Now, I was also experiencing stress at the time. So I can't just put it down to cannabis or a particular strain. It's usually the stresses within my life which will trigger them. Lack of sleep is another one. Eating unhealthy. So having far too much sugar, refined sugar. Fizzy drinks, people going, oh, do you want a fizzy drink now? I don't, I'll have some water. And that's nice for actually keeping your weight down as well. You're not consuming any, I mean, I wouldn't dare consume a Red Bull. Ugh.
It's petrol for humans, really. But so, you know that when you mentioned that there a minute ago about the resetting the system, so I take it, is that where immunity arrives then for you got children that need to then change medicine over a certain period of time? It's because the body gains a natural immunity because of these abundance of like synthetic, I don't like using that synthetic cannabinoids, but at least, you know, included phytocannabinoids?
Well, it's from what I understand, I'm not an expert in this area. I say this is a new concept that's been to me that I'm just learning about. And I believe you've spoken to John Griffin and Matt Hughes. And again, there's new concept to them as well. And it's quite heavily used in the US, but it makes complete sense. So it's because you've oversupplied, the body just goes, oh, well, we don't need to produce any. And I always struggle to say that word, anandamide. So it stops producing as much. And the receptors, essentially, as I understand, are not there. So it's not available for anything to bind to. So you have to kind of give it this reset, kickstart it again. It's a new one that I need to do a lot more reading about, or I need to do a lot more reading about. But Bonnie was so fantastic in the way she described everything. She gave really in-depth, and this is what we need in this country. I don't know anyone in this country other than Dr. Danny Gordon, that really does know a lot about, an in-depth amount about the endocannabinoid system. When I did my degree in Biomedical Sciences in 1999, way too long. 1999. Last century, endocannabinoid system was not mentioned, didn't exist. We learned about cannabis in forensic science. That was it. And that was just to detect it in somebody's blood, or that was just to, be able to charge somebody. Nothing to do with it being a medicine. It was a drug. It was a recreational drug. It was a drug of abuse. I now found out that clomazepine that I was put on at the age of 15 till 18 is now another drug of abuse, and is quite used by ravers. So I was off my tits for 2 years basically at school. So I just don't sometimes understand the rationale of the pharmaceutical industry and why it's being held back when we've got so much proof. There is so many papers out there. There is so much evidence that it has a positive effect on epilepsy. You watch the videos of children that are given it and the fits stop like that. Why is this? Why are we being pushed to isolate? Isolate does not have anywhere near the same effect as a full plant extract. It does not.
Frustratingly, it is exactly that. We're in this. Often I get comments on the YouTube channel that they say that at the bottom, like, how is it we can't get the medicine? And it's never the clear one answer. You're dealing with this regimented format of undereducation through pharmacists and GPs and stuff like that. You're dealing with the pharmaceutical industry, which put up hurdles continuously, a finite number of medicines in the first place, just an absence of cannabinoid profile detail, standardized testing, which is one of the things actually I'd like to mention about that just in a minute or two. But one of my own personal question I was going to ask you, Callie, was that, like I mentioned before, my brother does chemistry, and when I gave him over my book, he was like, well, you've actually kind of misdone this bit here, Conor. And what it was the obviously precursor cannabinoid, CBGA, which is formed, obviously, totally cool if I get these wrong, I'm not a chemist by any means, but is it gerryl pyrophosphate and oletevic acid, is that right? These two formed to then make CBGA. Well, he said that both of these are terpenoids, therefore all cannabinoids is a consequence of terpenoids. Is there any truth to that?
Terpenoids as a whole, cannabinoids are terpenoids.
Right.
And then they come down into branches. So you've got your terpenoids is a really big group. So think of that as a little bit like the canned section in the supermarket.
Right.
So that within the canned section, you've then got canned beans, you've got canned peas, you've got canned sweet corn, but they're all canned foods. So if you think of terpenoids as the canned food, and the cannabinoids is, say, the beans, and then you've got the terpenes, which are all the smelly aromatic compounds, they'll be like your sweet corns. So the different kinds of those.
Right.
So, and then you've got your flavonoids again, which are terpenoids, but they all come under this one big branch as a terpenoid. A lot of people think that terpenoids and terpenes are the same thing, and they're not. Terpenoids includes cannabinoids as well, so it's bringing them down into that kind of group. I always try to relate things to people that take it back to something that people understand. I have an uncle Ian, and I always have to take it back to motorbikes and engines. If you can relate it to an engine, he'll understand. If you're talking about some chemical, oxidative process or decarboxylation, he just goes.
Yeah.
But if I talk about, well, it's like taking the carburetor off and then putting a new one on. It goes, get it now.
It's the power of metaphor, the power of metaphor, definitely. So, I mean, I take it, so when you mentioned those are secondary metabolites, is that right? Terpenes and flavonoids.
Correct.
Should they be called secondary because they instigate the entourage effect, which is essentially a primary function?
The secondary metabolite is secondary to the plant.
Right.
So a primary metabolite would be something like an amino acid. So it's what the plant will first make in order to function. Your secondary metabolites are usually things that they produce to, say, defend itself, or because a lot of terpenes are produced in response to an insect, or to actually warn the next plant that it's close to the other one, or an antiviral, an antifungal property to it. And that's what they're for. So they are secondary metabolites of the plant, and they are phytocannabinoids to us that we can take in. It's a great question to say, is it primary? But it's what the plant produces on a second level, as opposed to that initial stuff like sugars, carbohydrates, all the basic kind of cell kind of movement that they make. The secondary metabolites are those that they will are to attract insects as well, or as I say, a lot of it is defense mechanism, and there's a lot of it is a stress factor, and a lot of people don't realize that we produce optimal conditions for the plants to grow, but is that what we really need to be doing? Yes, you're going to increase your biomass, and if that's what you're looking for yield-wise, but terpenes are a response to some kind of stress, insect attack, or to defend itself, not with optimal conditions. If it hasn't getting attacked, why does it need to produce it? So maybe we need to stress these plants.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's one of the things I've always wondered. So, I mean, hypothetical, like THCA and THC and all these different other chemicals, has it already been clarified that these are directly responsible for the plant to survive? Was it so that an animal eats it, forgets where it was, or I mean, what is the reason for these?
The cannabinoids, I am not sure. The terpenes, I can tell you, that is a defense mechanism. So that is, through a stress response, because a lot of other plants produce that as well. There's only this one limited plant, not including flaxseed, and hops actually surprisingly produces cannabinoids as well.
I find that interesting. Alcohol and cannabis, I find that interesting.
Yeah. Not that I'm a big alcohol fan.
High five. Fuck alcohol.
if they banned it tomorrow, I won't be bothered.
Yeah,
please.
Not an alcohol drinker whatsoever. Oh, nothing against people that like to drink alcohol, but it's not for me at all.
No, it's the amount of trouble I've seen due to alcohol. I have never seen anybody in my life get into a fight because they're stoned.
Yeah.
They might, have a little bit of a debate about who gets that last bit of pizza.
Yeah, so I was thinking there'll be footprints in the fridge, and that's about as much as you're going for.
Yeah. I mean, have you ever listened to any of the Streets?
Yeah.
He sums it up well. He sums it up. There's that argument that goes off between the lager lout and the stoner in one of the songs, and the pizza man turns up and it's got pineapple. Oh, we'll pick it up. and it's that kind of mentality that we need to get over, that people who consume cannabis, and I'm not going to use the word stoner because that has a negative connotation with it. I'm all about positive language. And this is something I went through when I actually came out of denial with my epilepsy, that I looked at it very differently. I started to look at it as though it was a gift. This was given to me as a gift. And I mentioned about being put onto a mission. And it was given to me as a gift to help others. And that's what it was given. And if you view it like that, you view it very differently. I give it a name. It's George. So it's what I can tell people if I'm going to have an over, I can just say to them, so nobody else in the room, Georgia's here, they'll know I need to get out of the room, they'll leave with me and not draw any attention. One of the worst bits is when people, are you all right? What should we do? Quick, get a spoon, put it in her mouth, she might chew her tongue off. And you're going, oh. No, just remain calm. All I need you to do is sit with me while this comes over me. It will go away. Just be there. Make sure I'm all right. Take my head. Make sure the face doesn't get smashed up again because I can't get any more fucking scars on my face. Tooth's gone. So that's what it's about. So I use positive language a lot. And this word stoner is a negative word. Yeah. And we're just consumers. We're no different to anybody else. And we need to find a better, more positive word to describe the cannabis consumer, a cannabis connoisseur, somebody who is not, you don't think, waste of space, complete waste. We've got to change that language, and that's part of this destigmatism.
Even the perfect you say consumer, because that's one of the things I always try and do in my language as well, is say consumer, because saying user, it has an implied derogatory connotation, and a lot of people don't even acknowledge that. So you'll be having a conversation with them, if they say cannabis user, there's a subconscious placement where they're immediately attributing a false characteristic, and you're just saying, oh, you need to change the word as consumer, and all of a sudden they seem like this rationalistic individual that's okay with, responsibility, whereas consumer, I don't know, always has that negative drug addict element,
Yeah.
But just talking about cannabinoids a minute ago there, how important is standard cannabinoid testing, standardised cannabinoid testing? Because I know that I think last month or the month before, the Association of the Cannabinoid Industry had put out an article on their website to say that they were in talks with, I think it was the Laboratory of Government Chemists, I think, and to attempt to create a consensus based in testing, and as a super duper brief attempt at research, I came across that you'd mentioned HPLC and UPLC. Are these the two only variety of testing, and what's the difference?
Right, there are lots. So again, if we think about this, let's take this down to thinking about things with wheels. So you've got cycles, motorbikes, you've got cars, you've got 4x4s, lorries and vans. So you've got all these different kinds of vehicles for movement. So one will go faster than the other, and one is easier to do than the other. So cycling is easier to do. So that would be something, that would be like a technique called TLC, which is thin layer chromatography. And that uses basically a gel, and you inject a little bit of a sample into it, and it moves along it, and it will tell you if there is a certain cannabinoid in there. A very simple process. You've then got something called IR, which is infrared spectroscopy, which shines infrared light through it, and that will create a little fingerprint. Again, not very much sample preparation involved, so there's no extraction involved there. But it is very basic. It will tell you if THC is there or CBD is there. It's not very accurate whatsoever, so it just tells you if it's present. So again, a very simplistic methodology. So then you've also got HPLC. Now that's high performance liquid chromatography. Now that involves a lot of extraction as well. So what you need to do is you need to digest the actual flour down. It then needs to go through a rotary evaporator to evaporate off of the cannabinoids into that solution. And then that is injected into a column. So you have a tube with a lot of beads within it, and the cannabinoids will then stick to those beads and hold on to them beads for a certain amount of time and then be released again. Right. And that's done under, I mean, I've simplified that massively, but it is quite a complicated instrument. And then what you've got is you've got a detector on the end of there, and that will detect how much is in there. But what you need to do first is put known concentrations through. So you have to do what's known as a standard curve. So you prepare a set of standards of known concentrations, you can draw a graph, and then you can plot your unknown onto that and find out what the concentration is. This all takes time and a lot of messing around. You've then got something called GCMS, and that's gas chromatography, mass spectrometry. Now, as soon as you've got a mass spec on there, what you've got is a lot more accurate means of detecting the compounds. So that will work on the individual mass. Now, the other problem with that is that you've got some cannabinoids that are exactly the same mass. Right. So they're actually detected as the same thing, even though they're different. Yeah. So this is where the chromatography comes in, and it holds it at retention times. So it will be released at a particular time, so you can identify that, and then you can do what's known as quantifying from that. You can give an actual value to the amount that's in there. Each of those has its own level of difficulty in sample preparation and actually being able to run the instrument and get it to do what you need to do. But they're all of a different cost as well. And at the moment, there is no standardized method. So there's nobody saying that you should use gas chromatography in order to detect cannabinoids or terpenes with it, or you should use HPLC to do that. You can't compare the two. Right. It's a little bit like racing a motorbike against a car. Mm-hmm. The two very different vehicles, and you can't really compare the two. Even though they both got wheels, and they're both doing the same thing, getting you from A to B, you can't compare the speed of a bike to the speed of a car, really. Okay, they're doing the same thing, but they're not telling you the same thing at all. They're not going to tell you that the tires are as good for both of those. So it's actually making sure that everybody's using that same methodology to the same accuracy as well. Right. So there's something else called LOD. I call it LOD anyway. LOD, limit of detection. And each instrument has a different limit of detection. So that's how low it can actually go, and how low, the lowest concentration that it can detect with the least amount of variation. And the lower that is, the better, more accurate your methodology is. So it's having that and these standardized methods and this standardized preparation, because between sample preparation, you'll get different results as well. Yeah. So it's making sure that and this is what the biggest problem is there's none of this standardized. So you can have somebody using one of those simpler methods, such as the IR spectroscopy, and be telling you, oh, you've got 14% CBD in there. Have you really? Is that really 14%? What is what's the variation there? Yeah. And if there's a 10% variation in that, that's a big variation in what that's actually stating in there. So this is what's required, is these standardized methods and everybody using that same methodology in order to compare what they've got, as opposed to what we've got at the moment, where some people are using HPLC, people are using GCMS, and it's some people are using IR, and you've got NMR as well, which is nuclear magnetic resonance, which is another ball game completely. So it's standardizing and comparing like for like. If we're going to do Formula One, let's all have Formula One cars. Yeah. Let's not get the rally cars in there.
I think I like the metaphor. It's very pertinent. I think they had marked on their article that they were going to attempt to achieve 0.0001%. I think in their LOD, and I think they'd also included that it can contain up to 16 known cannabinoids. I didn't know what that meant at the time. I was like, 16, is that it? But obviously, does that mean that they can obviously analyse 16 cannabinoids on the basis of maybe maintaining a medicine that has 16 cannabinoids, and that's when they'll know the ratio per. So I think they've also tried to transfer it over to 1 kilogram per milligram of weight per human or something like that.
Well, I'd like to see this better, as opposed to a percentage being used, it being a base of weight to weight. Right. So as opposed to this, it's got 10% THC or 10% CBD within a solution. It should be based on the weight for weight. So how many milligrams per kilogram of sample you've got, milligrams per mil, per milligram per mil. Which would be weight by volume. But that's what needs standardizing, so that you're comparing like for like, and it's easy for the person to understand, so that they know when they've drawn 1 mil up into that syringe, they know exactly what is in there, and they've not got to sit there with a piece of paper going, so I've pulled 1 mil up, right, so it's got 0.2% THC, and having to do a whole equation before they even dare to give it. So it needs to be a lot easier for people to understand, and the accuracy is what is needed, and to hear that is what you're wanting. It is knowing that the reproducibility of that method as well is achievable, so that you are sure in what you're actually getting out of there. Now, the 16 cannabinoids, what that will be is what the methods have been validated for. Right. So usually you get what's known as a mixed standard. So you would get 16 different cannabinoids within that solution. Now, it may be that solution is then too saturated with cannabinoids to add any more in. So all they can actually do is analyze for 16 different ones at that point to actually do quantification as opposed to qualitative analysis. So what you get with a chromatogram is you get this separating out. Now I explained about that, the column. So the cannabinoids will stick to that column for a different amount of time, and then they're released, and you will get this increase in signal that occurs. So you get a chromatogram coming off which has different peaks on, that has a different area size under it. Now these can cross over, and quite often, as I say, the mass or the retention time, the affinity that they have for this tube is the same. So you get crossover, so you can get a false positive happening there. So these 16, they will be happy with that they can separate these out, be able to identify each one, and it have this consistent retention time with it. And it'll all be about that method validation that they've been happy with. A lot of them have come in from the US now, so you've already got a lot of the methodology that's been validated, which is really good to see. Israel's got a lot of stuff coming out of it as well, and they're quite secretive about their work, unfortunately. It's not, you have to really pull it out of Israel, whereas the US are really, really coming forward with lots of new methodology, which is really interesting. New thing that we're touching on at the moment is water activity. So everybody goes on about moisture content in the dried flower. Water activity tells you something completely different. So it will tell you about the potential for that actual flower to grow microbials in there. Everyone goes about in the analysis, goes on about cannabinoid content, terpene content, heavy metal content, pesticides, but everyone seems to forget about microbes. We can control heavy metals. You control what you're putting on that plant. You know what's going into there, so you know if any heavy metals. Pesticides, you can control what you're putting on that plant. You know, if you're indoor, there's no field drift from a neighbouring field. So pesticides, again, problem solved. Microbes, they're always going to grow. You've got that perfect growing environment. You've got things like E. coli, Salmonella, Aspergillus, all are non-harmful to the plant, no problems to the plant. But as soon as you inhale Aspergillus, it will get into your lungs and cause a lung disease. So we need these tests available for people, and people need educating in this, that you can't see a lot of these actual microbes that are there, but we still need to test for them, and the products need testing to say that they are free of these, free of human pathogens, because a lot of people who need these in the medicinal cannabis sector the patients are immunocompromised and can't afford to take something in that's going to give them another infection. So I think we need to concentrate a lot more on that than these other things that I see can be controlled, and you're in a lot more control of. The microbes are always going to grow. You can have a sterile environment and you can clean, but you're still breathing out things every day. You're covered in what's known as commensals. Every time you touch your door, you could pick some up. Every time you touch your head, you scratch, a bit of E. coli goes onto it, boom. Or, you know, it's not as simple as that, but we're covered in all sorts of...
So that's so I take it, would you be a proponent of like localized lab testing for like home growers and stuff like that, and make it, I mean, is that a relatively easy thing to set up, do you think, or is that relatively complicated?
Do you know what will stop that? Is the licensing. And you will need a Schedule 1 license in order to open that lab, and that is what will stand in the way there. That is simply what will cause the problem there. So I can't see that happening anytime soon. There are labs out there, but they are, as I say, they're not Schedule 1. What I honestly would like to see is I would like to see labs teaming up with doctors. So I would like to see in the future you feeling confident enough to go to your doctor and say, I've been using this batch of cannabis, this is Gorilla Glue, and I've been finding this has been helping with my pain, my whatever. You give a sample to your doctor then sends that off to this lab. They will test the cannabinoid content, the terpene content of that, the flavonoid content I would like to see, amino acid. I'd like to see the whole profile done on that. That then goes onto your records with your notes of how you made that, that made you feel. So did it give you any kind of problems with paranoia? Did you get cotton mouth? Did you find there was any adverse effects? But you're recording that in your own experience, and then with all the other drugs that you're being prescribed as well. That's what I would like to see. If that will happen, I don't know. But we should. Go on.
Sorry, no, that's one of the frustrating things actually I've recently, I found out a couple of days ago, that since the law has been passed in 2018, there has been no trials whatsoever, randomised controlled trials or even observational trials, as you mentioned, instigated at all through NHS. Not one. Like that's insane when you think about that. It's like no wonder we're at this hurdle of continuously grinding our way through. Like what you mentioned before, and I know Project 21 is going to be good for this. A lot of people are calling it a clinical trial, but it's a register. You know, it's not really a clinical trial, I say. But it's certainly something that's kind of frustrating, to say the least, that this is what we're dealing with. Not one trial has been passed through. And what do you think the reason is this for this?
I've got to be careful now. The more and more you get deeper into this world, and the more and more you just feel there's something going off.
Yeah.
It's not right. There's why? Because in 2018, I was in Parliament that day when the law changed, and Carly Barton was there, and she spoke, and we thought, you know, this is the way forward. Things are changing. Yeah. Things are changing. Nothing's changed at all. No. Nothing. There's lots of people making money now out of CBD. Yeah. That's what I've seen. People are becoming more educated, and it's brought it to the forefront, and people are talking about it. The stigma's shifting with it. I think the way that the pharmaceutical industry like to go is like one single compound on its own to work. Yeah. And anything else in there is classified as contamination because they don't understand it. That's wrong. And sometimes we actually just need to accept that nature's right. And I'm all for making records, but we need to be pragmatic about this. If this strain is working, why can people not use it? Yeah. This because people want to make money on it and ring fence it for themselves? I don't know. But it's why have we got no prescriptions? Why are people still having to pay £2,500 a month for the children's prescriptions? I mean, I do know they wanted to put me on Keppra when I went back to the neurologist, and I actually come out of denial, and I refused to. Something called Keppra Rage that comes with it. But the thing is, with Keppra, that costs £6 a month. Yeah. Now, when you work, you've got a business, and they don't know enough about cannabis. The doctors don't know themselves. My neurologist herself was very interested in what I'd got to say, but she had to finish the interview and finish the letter with, I cannot recommend that you consume cannabis. Well, I'll carry on.
Is that just out of professional preservation? Yeah.
Complete and utter. She has to cover herself. And I totally understand that. But what she was asking me a lot of questions and wanted a lot of information, and she wanted the papers from me. And every time I go, I take her, here's a stick, here's a little flash drive, lots of papers for you for loads of evidence. I understand you can't afford to give it to me, but I want you to record what I'm doing. Yeah. And if you're willing to record what I'm doing, it's down here as evidence. And what I want to also change is this opinion that everybody is a gateway drug. Mm-hmm. Cocodamol's a gateway drug, tramadol's a gateway drug, but we give them out like sweets. Diazepam is a gateway drug, not cannabis. Yeah. Cannabis is an exit drug, and this needs changing. We need to change that. And what I wanted to show is you can be successful, you can run businesses, you can have children, you can get an education, and you can still get up every morning and go to work. It doesn't screw people's lives up, and you're not going to end up like Zamo in a toilet overdosing. It certainly doesn't. We were a little bit crazy, and we're a bit out there sometimes. And
that's a personality characteristic. That's all.
Yeah.
It's one of the things that I think kind of annoying when people say that about the gateway drug thing, because it's such an outdated narrative that it doesn't conform to the truth. And one of the things I found just through research and stuff is that the only two actual legitimate gateway substances are cocaine and amphetamines, because these cause a primer element neurologically. So it's like that's what instigates the individual to continuously crave that same hit. Whereas even alcohol and tobacco, they do have a tendency for habit formation, but it doesn't have the same primer element neurologically. So I'll have to try and find that paper. I'll have to throw that up there.
Yeah,
just leave that out.
Please do, because it's you see, what I'm seeing more and more of is It is the pharmaceutical drugs being given out. So painkillers, particularly. Tramadol is a big one that I'm seeing a lot, particularly with the older generation it's given to. And then somebody's, son or daughter will come along, oh, I've got backache. Oh, have one of these, they're really good, it'll help you sleep.
Yeah.
So they'll have a tramadol and then they'll have another one. And then slowly they don't realise that it's an opiate.
Yeah.
That's the same as heroin.
100%.
So, oh, but the doctor gave it me.
Yeah.
No, it's still heroin.
Yeah.
League of drugs. So you're still getting that addiction pattern forming with it. And I want people to talk more openly about pharmaceutical drugs, and about just because a doctor gives it you does not mean that it's not damaging. It's and I so want to talk so much about this of doctors are not gods. They've got a lot of knowledge, but you have a lot of knowledge as well, a lot of power to do your own research, and it's okay to question them. Yeah. It's okay to say, hold on a minute, what is this you're giving me? Why has this got this list of side effects this long? Why have I completely changed personality here? Why have I put all this weight on? Why did I not feel like me? Why did my grades go down to C's and D's? Yeah. And we need to question that. We get second opinions. It's okay to question. And just because they've got qualifications doesn't make them better than you, doesn't make them higher than you, and it certainly doesn't give them the power to talk down to you.
I completely agree, and that's one of the things me and Joanne actually had a conversation about before we started the interview, is that there's because of the fact it's essentially a capitalist economy that we're based on, it's consumerist based promotion from the pharmaceutical companies. So even though these things are given to people because they're not well, or they have symptoms based on it, the symptoms are formed in a way that these pills can be distributed in a consumerist fashion. So it's, even though it's somebody that goes to the shop, they need to buy water, it'll be in the same dynamic as somebody going to the doctor that has a particular condition. They can, in a sense, buy these pills, and it's that format, and it's on its bare bones, that I think if that was to be changed, I think that's a societal shift if that was to occur.
I worked for GlaxoSmithKline for a year during my degree, and I saw how it worked inside, and there was profit share as well. So if a particular drug did very well and you worked as part of that drug, you got an amount of the profit from that. Yeah. Now, the business model that pharmaceutical companies work on, they don't want you to get better, because if you get better, you don't need any more of their medication.
Exactly.
You don't need any more of their medication. They're not making money.
Mm-hmm. It's false incentive then, really. This should not be the case. And it just takes us back to that thing where we need more research on cannabis. And one of the things that's kind of, again, apparent is that the lack of domestic production, which would most likely help research. Because I think in the ACI's article, they had said, it was actually quite funny that they referred to their conversation with the laboratory of government chemists, that they were engaged in high-level talks. And I think that they'd said that we need to engage in the provision of supplies, which I thought was the most poetic way of describing. I need to try and find green,
We need to find somewhere to score.
That's what it's like. We need to get provision of supplies. This guy's needing a half queue. That's what he's needing. But that's one of the things. Do you think that would help research, and also the push towards legalization, if we had a greater domestic production in the UK?
What we need to first do is get rid of all this red tape,
right,
and all the problems that go with it, and all of the hoops that need jumping through in order to get a license just to be able to cultivate. Because as soon as you've got a cultivation license, that doesn't mean you can supply, because then you need a supply license, and then you need to be registered with the MHRA, and that product and that each individual compound then needs registering. So I think what we first need to do is get rid of all this bureaucracy and red tape, because of what I've seen. I've come back from Denmark, and what they've got in place is far, far superior to what we've got in place. We're just a joke at the moment.
I was actually going to ask you that about your trip to Denmark. Were you over there? Is that to learn about industrial scale production?
Well, yep. So I'd gone to a licensed cultivations facility over there. So to learn how they are doing that, seeing if we can help improve any of their methodology, look at what they're doing, get a better understanding of it, understand the whole, the actual whole Danish model as well. And the system that they go through is so much better than over here. So it's run by private clinics. So the private clinics, they obviously who the prescribers are, but they are massively subsidised, so the actual costs of them are a lot larger. You've then got a choice of 5 different strains, depending on what your ailments are. So it's not just one size fits all. There are 2 different oils they can pick, 3 oils they can pick from, a CBD-based oil, an indica-based oil, and a sativa-based oil. So you've got choice there for what, suits you better to what your needs are as well. But their actual licensing process is so much simpler. It's the turnaround is weeks as opposed to nearly years. I know people who have applied for licenses within this country and are still going through the process of actually trying to get a cultivation license after years, and they are professional operations with the security and everything in place, and still have not moved any further forwards with actually having a cultivation license. So why is that? There's so many barriers.
Yeah, what does Denmark? How are they able to be so fluent with their applying for licenses? And do they only? Because I'm aware that in the UK they have, like you mentioned, the cultivation license, the extraction license, a hemp license, the THC. So I mean, do they have the similar format?
Well, it's you obviously have your hemp license over there, and you obviously have high THC license. But at the moment, they've got 56 farms producing high THC. 56. In this country, in this country, I think there's 6 at the most, and that's including research licenses as well. So obviously you've got your big GW who export everything.
Yeah, to say the least.
Then you've got a couple of universities with licenses, and then you've got places that got research licenses, but all they can do with that is do research on it, and then it all has to be destroyed. Every single last leaf has to be destroyed and recorded and destroyed.
There'll be viewers right at this moment sharing a tear for this discussion.
it happens. I've seen it happen, and it's you're looking at it thinking that's medication. Why is this not being distributed? Why? There's been no toxicity of it. We can go to a lab and we can get the microbial test. We could test it for heavy metals tomorrow. Or it could just be run through, an extraction process through, CO2 extraction, which would kill a lot of things in there. But no, let's just burn it.
So what makes the Danish model so efficient then? Are they just more practical about how they go through it?
The Danish way is a lot more, I would say, pragmatic.
Right.
Yeah, people are trusted to have their own common sense a lot more over there. Over here, we apparently don't have any common sense, so they have to write all the laws for us and have to think for us as well, just in case somebody does something stupid. And I think we're going down this US route of sue culture and don't think for yourself. Then if you're saying I'm not thinking for myself, I can't blame myself for anything going wrong. And we need to get rid of that. We need to take responsibility for our actions, and that. If you're going to do something stupid's going to happen to you. I just, from what I've seen in Denmark, they are a lot more pragmatic about it, and they think a lot more. They want to speed things up. They don't like having as much red tape in place. One of the farms I'm working with in Denmark, it's going to take 3 weeks to get the license. 3 weeks.
Yeah, that's really quick turnaround.
Yeah. Whereas 18 months in this country, if you're lucky, and that's without any guidance. You've just got to build it, they'll come and inspect it, and then, well, we might give you the license or we might not, but we'll not give you any guidance. But you have to pay for all of that before we give you it.
Well, it's one of the things as well when it comes to the hemp license, for instance, it's this annual, you've got to pay it every year. It's like £500 for the initial license, £350 to renew it every single year. So it's that in itself, in between grow seasons, I mean, that seems impractical to say the least, which is another issue.
But with hemp licenses, it does state on there you cannot do anything with the flower.
Yeah.
It is. Do not think about the flower. If the flower starts to be produced, you've got to just kill it. The flower is not allowed, no extraction whatsoever. So a hemp license is designed for the production of industrial hemp. So what you need is you need to have a customer as such. So if you're making animal bedding, for example, you've got to have a letter of intent from them to do that. Right. If you're going to make biofuel, you need to be working with a biofuel company with a letter of intent, and that all has to be logged. Now, they are very rigorous in telling you this. It states on the license that you're not allowed to do that. So that's why the hemp license is a lot cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
Once you then move into a cannabis license, a low THC cannabis license, again, that's for research purposes, and the high THC one will be for research purposes. But all that can be done with that is research. So you can grow the plant, grow it bigger, look how many cannabinoids are in there, cross-pollinate it with another plant and produce some more genetics. But it all has to be destroyed. Yeah. All has to be completely destroyed. And as you say, each year you have to have an inspection, you have to put that... you have to reapply for the license again and then pay for all of this as well. So there seems to be too many barriers. And yes, a domestic supply would be fantastic here. I mean, I would like to see personally, I like to see the person being able to grow their own. Yeah. You know, Callie's Amnesty, I don't know if you've come across at all. It's a fantastic idea where you state to the police, this is what I'm doing. I'm growing this number of plants. This is my ailment. This is what it's for. This is what I'm going to do. You can come and look at it anytime you like, officer. You know, you can have a cup of tea at the same time if you really want. You can have a bang up vaporizer, but, you know, but you can't.
Lighting your shift up. Come on, let's go.
Let's go, you know. But I think we need to take responsibility for ourselves and our own actions. And, you know, over the years, I've worked in the hydro industry over 20 years. I used to work in the shop. So I used to be what you call on the coal face. I was helping, you know, old people who, I remember this old gentleman, his wife had cancer and he just needed to do something. And the fact that he was growing plants to help and producing something that was alleviating her problems, she passed away, unfortunately, but it gave him hope. It gave him something to do. And the love that he was giving to those plants, you could see. Yeah. You know, those plants were giving back. They were growing more vibrant. But that was the CO2 he was giving out and the intent that was given to those plants. And it was, people forget the holistic therapy that it is from actually producing plants and growing and the reward it gives you back for actually doing that. Yeah. So it's not just about the actual cannabinoids that come out of there, that whole process. And, you know, if it's keeping somebody alive for another, you know, to see that plant to be harvested, that's giving somebody hope, because I'm a big believer in is you can think yourself better. You don't, it doesn't cure you, but the way that you think about things and the way that you think about your illness, you can help control it and you can help repair better. That positive intent and that positive language is so important. And a lot of people forget that about the growing side of things, that it is actually a little hobby as well, and it keeps people going.
Yeah, no, I fully agree with that sentiment as well. It's like the mind-body connection, how you can do that. Think yourself well, think yourself into a state of disrepair. I've actually got a friend who's got MS, and he said the exact thing. He says, not only is the medicine that he's producing himself actually helping his condition, but psychologically it puts him in a state of focus. So he continuously, what I'm doing tomorrow, I'm focusing on the next part, and when the harvest comes around, there might be a bit of grudging when it comes to the trimming part, but he'll still be delighted that it's there, you know. And these are things that don't get attributed to cannabis consumers, because most people are too focused on the compartmentalized, is it medicinal, is it recreational, what kind of character are they, and, you know, just to create an accurate narrative, as we're aware of, you know. And that's one of the things that it does. It goes unseen, the psychological health that's a consequence of growing cannabis. And that's one of the things where, as well, when you said about, is it Callie's Amnesty, when they're promoting this way of living, is that normalization's key. Individuals who've spent a lot of the time in the closet, if you want to call it that, when they're smoking, is that itself has also hindered legalization, because we went to Amsterdam just the one time. And it was interesting, because I was just young, and you've seen all these people walking in and out, and you'd be looking at guys like, that guy's a professor, he'd be wearing the suit and the tie and that, and you'd think to yourself, and it was just such a culture shock. And I think that in the UK, we do have a bit of this closed-mindedness where we still attribute the stoner narrative, the lazy individual, when it's just not the case at all. You're a prime example. You're in the lab, you know, you can't be lazy in the lab, really.
No, you can't do that at all. And it is changing, though. I'm noticing it changing, because I've got, you know, there were teachers, my science teacher, who went through A-levels with me, and I smoked all the way through my A-levels, and they didn't know, and I used to keep it a secret. I connected with him on Facebook and was telling him what I was doing, and he campaigns for prostate cancer.
Right.
And he's now proud of what I'm doing, and he's very supportive. He shares my posts. I mentioned I was a C cadet, so the person who run it was Mom, and we used to have drug lectures, and drugs were bad.
Yeah.
And it's, we all know you're all going to die from it. And no, they didn't know either that I was doing that, and that this was a normal to me. And now she is being supportive of my posts about medicinal cannabis. She'll like them. She'll tell me she's proud of what I'm doing. She'll share them. And when you see people like that who you were so scared of knowing that you were doing that, now supporting you and actively telling you that they're proud of what you're doing and to keep doing it, you know the change is coming. And it's now time to stand up and be counted. You spoke about being in the closet, and I was in the closet for many, many years. And it was one of the hardest things to do. It was a year ago, I sat on stage, and it was a CMC's scientific synopsis, and I've been asked to go and talk as a patient. I've never done it. And I stood on stage, and I actually stood and said, you know, I consume cannabis for epilepsy, and I'm scared that people think I'm a bad person, and I've been programmed to think that this was a bad thing. And the professor at the end of it, who was the compare for it, he turned around and he said, what I took from that, Callie, is that you thought you were a bad person, and you're not. You're not a bad person. You're quite the opposite. Don't think you're a bad person. And it was like coming out, and I still feel like that today, of feeling just like, I'm proud of this. And my biggest hashtag at the moment is hashtag not ashamed. And I am not going to be ashamed anymore. I am not going to hide, and I'm going to talk about it openly. And you're not going to chastise me. I'm going to help people, and people need help, and not to be ashamed of this. We are not bad people.
Yeah, not at all. And it's perfect that it's hashtag. I mean, how perfect is that? Hashtag, come on. That's just, you missed it. Hashtag.
Hashtag not ashamed.
That's what I was like. It's just perfect, you know. So, because obviously it sounds like a silly question, but obviously when it comes to the growing situation, what is your preferred dynamic of growing? Obviously you're hydro focused essentially, so what's hydro's known when it comes to like small time indoor growers is it's way better yields, and it's very infrequently said about why. You just have a friend that be like, oh, double yield, 5 ounces to the 2, whether it's 2 ounces in soil. What's the reason why hydroponics has a notoriety for increasing your yield?
Because you are 100% in control. It's you sort of force feeding the plant. So everyone says, so hydro or soil. Well, I always say, well, it depends what situation you're in and what you're trying to achieve. So as a researcher, hydroponics, I can, with hydroponics, I can narrow down exact amounts of particular elements I want to add. So, for example, I can have higher nitrogen content at the beginning and control that. I can then throw a little bit of zinc in when it's needed, or increase the calcium as the plant demands more calcium in order to, help that flower set formation. So you are in 100% control. You are steering that plant. You are playing more of God. Soil, there's a lot more microbiology needs to occur. So there's a lot more breaking down. The elements aren't as bioavailable. It's locked up in the soil. So you need to release that. And that takes time for the plant to do that. And the plant uses energy to do that as well. So you've got the mycorrhiza that needs to actually build there. However, on the flip side, it's a lot easier to do. So with hydroponics goes wrong, it goes wrong big time. Yeah. You can really have a plant just completely die because you've missed a watering, or the CF's gone skyrocket, or your pH has drifted out. But with the soil, if you forget to water it, it's usually a lot more forgiving. You've got a lot more chance of it not becoming stressed or dried out. So it's pluses and minuses, but it's just that force feeding. In some ways, the hydroponics is about mass production. It's about high yields and providing all the optimum content to the plant at the time when it needs. So you can steer it, you can force it to do other things. You can trick it into actually producing flowers earlier. So it's that control element to it. Whereas soil, you've got to take a little bit more of a step back. And I'm not as good at soil growing as I am hydro growing. Right. Soil growing is because I fiddle too much and I want to just... No, you've just got to let it do its thing. Yeah. Hydroponics is tweak this, tweak that.
we,
Pick
we
your run off.
we mentioned a bit earlier about how you were key in making the Shogun nutrients. Could you say about like the process of what came to actually produce the nutrients in the first place?
Well, we used to work for another company called Vitalink. So we originally made a brand called Vitalink, and we did a lot of work there, and we moved on to do our own thing. Obviously, we felt it was time that we produced our own brand and produced my own company, because I worked for somebody then, and I say, started this company up. And it was that the idea of, well, we're going to make a new nutrient, and we obviously went through and looked what was already on the market, the common methodology of use. So you've got your cocoa. I mean, over time, what I've seen this shift in the years. When I first got into the industry in the early noughties, it was NFT, so open root network, hydroponics. You had a nutrient-rich solution that you pumped around over the roots. Mm-hmm. That's now changed over time. Everyone's gone towards the soil and cocoa fibre. Well, cocoa fibre is a lot more forgiving, as you probably already know. Again, it's got its own buffering capacity, but it's very easy to overdose on nutrients with that, so you have to be careful with that. And so what we tried to do with the actual range is not overproduce too many different solutions. We tried to put what was needed. So obviously a root stimulator to encourage root development, because in pure hydro, you haven't got all of that, and you have to introduce that. Some of the mycorrhiza in there, encouraging that root development, and that's through seaweed extracts. We then, obviously, we produced the A and B nutrients, which are what you call your baseline nutrients for your soil, for your cocoa, and for your hydro.
Right.
And then there's lots of the other additives. So there was always demand for more calcium within the plant, because it obviously demands a lot more calcium. So there was a CalMag solution produced in there, also a silicon-based solution which helps strengthen plants and helps protect against plant disease as well. We've got a finishing solution to force the plant to finish, so you're exposing it to a lot more sulfur at the end of the actual plant's life cycle, trick it into dying, so it thinks that it's coming to the end of its life cycle. And plants, essentially, all they're trying to do is carry on the genetic information. What they want to do is reproduce, and with cannabis, you're stopping that. What you're doing is you're producing a flower, and you're getting it to produce lots and lots of resin, but you're not allowing it to reproduce. So by tricking it to think it's dying, it's going to put the last bit of energy out of its root zone into those flower sets and produce more sugars in that area. Yeah. Trying to think what else we've got into the range as well that I often forget about. So there's the katana, silicon. We've obviously got the boost, which is a tricanthanol-based solution. This is a naturally occurring phytohormone that's found on the leaves of all of the plants. You get a particular high concentrations in alfalfa, and that helps with heat stress. It helps with to regulate metabolism and regulate photosynthesis within the leaves, because a lot of people don't realize that actually within your room, you've got this cycle of photosynthesis occurring, and what you need is light, nutrient, and CO2. And if one of those is out of balance, it's the limiting factor it will only grow to. Right. Now, if you haven't got enough CO2 within your room, and everything else is in abundance at light, what will happen is it can't convert through photosynthesis, it can't make the carbohydrates it wants. And what you get is these you get oxygen-free radicals forming, which cause damage to the plant. So it's about having this balance occurring within the plant. What you can do is use certain compounds that can help to reduce the stress that's actually formed by this imbalance that occurs, particularly with temperature, because that speeds the process up. And if it can't keep up with what's available to it, you're going to get damage in the plant. So that's where the boost can help with that. What's we've got in the range? I never like really promoting products. I always like to talk about everything else. It's just part of what I do. Yeah, it's far more interesting things.
Oh, I completely understand. I mean, where would aeroponics come into this situation then?
Aeroponics. I like aeroponics because you've just got your actual the roots are suspended in mist. And actually seeing true aeroponics is quite difficult because you don't get a mist. It's usually a spray. So it gets this kind of weird kind of area. But yeah, you can use any of these solutions within there. The only problem with aeroponics is because it's like an open wound, essentially. Yeah. Your roots are completely exposed, so disease can get in there a lot more easily. But you have got this perfect atmosphere for growth, and availability of nutrients is massive because it's not having to actually pass anywhere and there's nothing getting in the way. So aeroponics I do like for taking cuttings, really like that for taking cuttings because you can see it all. And then we've got aquaponics, which involves the fish as well. Never been any good at that. Usually when I alter the things for the plants to live, the fish die.
Yeah.
And then when I alter the things for the fish, plants die. I've never been good at that one.
To be honest, I had a friend I think it was this year, he'd mentioned about aquaponics, and I thought he was joking. The idea of it, like you're going over to see your plants and there's fish in there, you're like, I don't remember getting piranhas, you know. It's like that, you know. But yeah, it's so I mean, would you have any tips for anybody that's just starting out growing? And like, I know that obviously depends on the medium and depends on the conditions, but I mean, do you have any general tips for anybody that's new to this?
Less is more. Less is more, right? Just because you've got 10 plants, you'll probably get the same as off 10 plants as you will get off of 2. Don't overwater. Do let the plants dry out. The wet dry cycle is so important. Just allow those plants chance to take that water up. They need that time. So test it every day, feel it. Is it wet? Don't need watering. Because that is the biggest mistake people will make at the beginning, is overwatering. Done it myself. Killed loads of plants doing it. Overwatering is one of the biggest. And look at your environment. You know, consistent temperatures and humidity. Get that humidity up. Everybody forgets about humidity, wonder why the plants are burning. You can do really simple little things to get humidity up. So a bowl of water with a towel in it, that will evaporate, a fan going over it. There's lots of little things that you can do yourself without spending lots and lots of money on a ridiculously expensive humidifier. You don't need to spend hundreds of pounds on these things. You can do all these little things yourself. Make sure you've got a pH meter if you're doing hydro. The overwatering thing.
Is pH necessary to check if you have soil? A lot of people that I know check the water pH before it goes in and out. I mean, is it recommended to even flush your plants throughout the grow, check the pH that way as well? I mean, would you recommend that?
Yes, if you're seeing anything that's a little bit kind of, any tip burns occurring, anything your plant's not starting to look right, give it a flush through and have a look. It's always a good idea that when you're actually pouring through, now at first you're not going to find that sweet spot. You're going to get runoff. You do, but you can get to the point where you don't get runoff and you are perfectly feeding those plants the exact plant that they need. But monitoring that runoff is a good idea. You can see what's going off in the root zone. You know what's actually happening. pH is really important because the availability of the nutrients is within this kind of sweet spot. It's between about 5.2. People say 5.5, but you can go down to 5.2, fine, no problems, to about 6.5. And that is where all the actual elements are available to the plant. Out of those ranges, there's lockout. The plant can't take them up anymore. So it is important, those.
Right. There's also the same for if you were to overfeed or even overwater, is the potential of lockout through the soil. They actually hold out the nutrients. Is that accurate as well?
Yes. Well, the big one for lockout is cocoa fibre. So not just with soil. The cocoa fibre has what's known as a high cation exchange capacity. Basically, it hangs on to positively charged ions, such as your potassium and your calcium, particularly calcium. Calcium, it just hangs on to like you wouldn't believe. And that's when your lockout occurs, hence why you usually need to feed a bit more. But flushing that out can help to do that. It can help to, remove that locked up calcium. But it's just making sure that pH is in the correct area as well. So it's making sure that you don't get it. But you can get lockout in soil as well. This is where hydro is a lot easier in some respects. You don't get lockout occurring. Or it's a lot easier to completely replace that solution and start from scratch again. And if you're using rock wool and run to waste, every time you're replenishing that root zone with a fresh nutrient solution, so the plant gets to choose what it wants to take and what it wants to spit out. You're not limiting it to what is available to it.
I think I've seen one of your posts on Facebook where you had promoted rock wool through when you're using clones, as that would be the preferred methodology if you're doing industrial grow. Is that right?
For me, yes, personally, yeah. For research particularly, So research, it's all about having a limited number of variabilities. Rockwell removes those variabilities.
Right.
Rockwell removes any unknowns. So you can truly say, that was the zinc that I added that caused that. That was the calcium that caused that.
Right.
That was the extra mycorrhiza I added to it. With soil, there's a lot of unknowns on there. It's a little bit like full plant extract and isolate.
Yeah.
Isolate is far easier to study, but is it having the same effect?
Yeah. So Rockwell then has, I take it from that, Rockwell has no nutrient basis whatsoever. It's just this bland substance.
Correct, yeah. Completely inert, and that's what it makes it fabulous.
Right.
The only problem is it's not very environmentally friendly, and getting rid of it's problematic.
Yeah.
So it has its pluses and minuses to it, and it's finding that kind of what is the right thing. It also doesn't release nitrogen, which things like cocoa fibre and soil do, which then attract scarab flies, you know, the little black frigging fungus nuts.
Yeah.
Well, their larvae are little buggers. They get into your roots, they chomp them, and then they give them disease. They spread disease, and then they cause problems. So, see you later, darling. You've got problems with those. So they give out nitrogen, which is basically, it's like a little holiday home for them. That nitrogen being given out, it's a little bit like pumping, you know, candy floss into the air, and they go, oh, let's go, boys. It's the candy floss van. Let's go into the fair, and then they disappear, and then that's it. You've got infestation. So that's one of the downsides to it. Unknown soil as well, unknown nutrient content in there. You don't know what's already in there. Now, don't get me wrong, there are some very good brands out there. Some really good brands out there, but there's some also absolute rubbish out there as well. That, I mean, I bought some potting compost from B&Q, somewhere like that. Anyway, it was a big chain store.
Yeah.
And it got bits of paper in it and bits of, it was just, what is this? What's this? I didn't know what the nutrient content was to it or anything.
I like the idea of one of the viewers sitting looking over at their plant wilting and all yellow, like, shit, maybe it's my soil.
Yeah. They're all good, don't get me wrong. There's some good reputable brands out there, and do stick to a good reputable known brand. It's not all rubbish, but you do get what you pay for in some respects. And if you're going down the local garden centre that's got, you know, the cheapest soil, you're not going to get something that's of high quality or know where the source is either.
Yeah, and just best doing your research, essentially. So essentially, before we go, Callie, you wanted to talk about women in cannabis. I mean, you're obviously a woman in cannabis, and one of the things yesterday when you mentioned that as a talking point, I had a wee look of women that are kind of active in cannabis, and the list is endless. Like the amount of females that are like actively promoting this situation in America in particular. I mean, you've got CEOs, directors, activists, doctors, innovators, entrepreneurs. You know, it's really encouraging for the whole equality basis. You know, so I mean, how do you feel about women in cannabis? Do you see the same thing?
Yes, I think we need to stand up. It's a female plant. The plant that we want is female. So we need to be representing that. You know, I know some absolutely amazing women. And if we want to change this stigma involved with it, I think, you know, women are the way forwards. We look at things in a very different way to men. And, you know, I love the men in my life, and I wouldn't be anywhere without them. We need to all work together. But you know, this has been a very male-dominated arena for as long as I've been in the hydroponic industry and the cannabis industry. Well, it's time for change. It's time that they listen to us. You know, we are equal. We are as good. And if not, you know, we are a lot more connected to it and a lot more... I think if we want this stigma to change and this accepting that this is medication and not just about drug taking, women are the way. We are what is going to hopefully pave that way, and it's going to be a difficult thing to change, and that you know, that viewpoint in it. But some of the best growers I know are female. So some of them are absolute little gems at it, and there's more and more of us coming out. We're all a little bit weird. We're all, you know, usually got funny coloured hair, and you know, we think about things differently, but we're all very passionate about it. And there are some absolutely amazing warrior women who are so strong and have stood up for what is wrong for so long and deserve so much more recognition. And women aren't just money focused either. I think that is the other thing, is that it stops it always being about money, 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 money. You know, okay, we've all got to make a living, but it doesn't need to be the primary focus of this. And I think that's what we need to get rid of as well. We need to be educating and talking openly about everything else that's going off with this plant.
It's kind of a testament to the plant itself, because it does encourage this benevolent fairness, and but it was quite amusing yesterday actually, because I was like, do you know what I'll do? Because we're going to talk about women in cannabis, then I'll get some proper talking points, certain women. I was like, do you know what? The list's too big. I'll just write down general categories that they've had the influence on, you know. But it was really encouraging to see, because like anything, nobody wants a world where it's one-sided on any spectrum, you know. So it's like I really hope that this continues. You know, the more cannabis gets pushed forward, the more it's a testament to what the plant represents, more than, you know, this basis of who's fair, who's whatever. It's just the reality is we're all human. You know, that's what we should be looking for.
Yeah, you know, and bringing us all together. It's what I have seen within the cannabis community and the female cannabis community is the support for one another, and they're not trying to tread on each other. It's about saying, look at what this woman's doing, look at what she's achieving, look at how she's going about this. And it's not about trying to get one up on the other one. It's about celebrating one another and supporting. And I feel so lucky to be part of it. I feel so lucky to have met so many amazing women who I now call friends, who I was scared 2 years ago to even mention. And my son's 16 now, so I can talk a lot more openly now about things, and he's proud of it. And it's really things are changing.
It's good. It's good. You're one of them at the forefront as well, so you should definitely be proud in that aspect. I like the idea of you saying that your son's, he's open about it now and looks over and like, Mum, what's all the smoke coming out from the back room? Don't worry about that, wee man. That's all right. You know.
Well, we've always been open about everything, and it's about education, and it's about talking openly. And I speak about my epilepsy, and I speak about my consumption, and you know, I speak about, you know, how does it, you know, do you feel it affects you? Is there anything that, you know, you don't like? And it's no, I'm proud of what you do, Mum. Keep doing it. You know, somebody's got to fight this fight, and yeah, I'm gonna stand up and fight all the way.
Quite right. It does add, like I said, just before we get going, it's kind of one of those last levels of stigma, because you're dealing with that situation where you go over to Italy or France and you've got little children that are drinking alcohol as a custom, and then you mention cannabis and it's like, oh, but the state of their brains and all these other things that are going to, you know, so it's, fingers crossed, that'll be one of the last walls that will fall. Not promoting child consumption of cannabis, but at least the awareness. There's a lot of child books out there that are talking about the benefit of the plant, and this is what we're needing to do instead of fear-mongering, you know.
Yeah. Oh, totally, because you will always have, prohibition doesn't work. It makes people more inquisitive. And then people, it's about harm reduction, and we keep forgetting about this harm reduction kind of side of things. With all drugs, there needs to be a harm reduction. And where do we see the harm? And things like the spice that's coming in, you know, and if you're not talking to your children about this and educating them about it, how going to be curious. So you need to educate and be talking openly and allow them to be able to come to you and talk openly about any of this.
Yeah, that's essentially covered everything. Callie, would you anything you'd like to add before we get going?
I'd just like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to actually talk. No, carry on doing what you're doing, mate. Don't give up. And just spread the word. And that's what it is now. And it's about changing opinions and not giving up and not feeling like, you know, this isn't worth carrying on with, even though that we're fighting against a government that we feel that is not listening to us and has got a hidden agenda. We must never give up, and we must all pull together, and one day things will change. Just keep talking about it.
I really appreciate that, Callie. That's actually more powerful for me than you know. It's extremely difficult to maintain this situation, so I really appreciate it. Thank you very much for that.
Yeah, do not give up. Not for 1 minute. Do not have anybody think that what you're doing is wrong, because days, Women in Cannabis is one, the UK one. She wanted to give up, bless her, and she just needed that boost again. And we all need it some days, because sometimes it gets you down how people will look at you sometimes about it, or just think that you're this crazy stoner. Well, we're going to change the language. We're going to talk about this more, and we're going to educate people, and just keep doing it, mate. Keep doing it, and do not give up.
Thank you very much, Callie. This has been an absolute pleasure.
Not a problem, mate. You take it easy.
You take it easy as well. Cheers, Callie.
Thanks to Callie for giving me her time, and thanks to you for sticking around until the end of the video.
I sincerely hope you enjoy the content. I'll see you next time.